Hello, my dear friends, and welcome to Dr. Monkey, where we laugh together and cry together, but hopefully take something away to treat each other a little better. Here's some interesting stories. One about a crazy OP's neighbor who decided OP is her babysitter and kept sending her little son to her. Please subscribe if you haven't, and I hope you'll enjoy it. Story 1. Years ago, this new neighbor of mine, she had recently moved to a house on the next street over, kept trying for the better part of a summer to use me as a free babysitter. It started when her kid, who was really cute, well-behaved, about 7 years old, showed up at my door at 7:15 in the morning. We were all just waking up and getting around, so I told him that my boys weren't ready to play yet and to come back in a few hours. That's when the kid had told me his mom had gone to work. This seemed a bit odd to me, so I brought him in and tried to call his mom. This was the time of only landlines. Sure enough, she was gone. So I brought him in and fed him breakfast. He stayed with us the rest of the day, and he got along well with my two boys who were 5 and 10. I had only talked to his mom about 2 times, so I had no idea why she thought this would be a good idea. When his mom came home, I walked him over so I could talk to her. I told her not to do that again. I told her I would be willing to watch him on occasion if asked first, but not every day. Her response was, "Well, what else do you have to do all day?" This kind of took me by surprise. I tried to tell her that I work at home on commissions. She rolled her eyes and told me that being an artist isn't a real job, and besides, I was married, so I didn't need to work. I should have pointed out to her that she was married and working, but I felt myself getting angry and I didn't want to argue with her. "Just don't do that again," I said to her. "You have teenage kids home for the summer. Have them babysit." She frowned at me and said, "They work." I said, "So do I." Then I went home. The next morning at 7:15, the kid sheepishly shows up again. Once again, I bring him in and feed him breakfast, and later lunch. Once again, I took him home to his mom, and once again, told his mother to please not do that again. She actually tried to tell me that it was my neighborly duty to watch him, and I told her that if she sent him tomorrow, I wouldn't be there because of a doctor's appointment. She said that as a babysitter, I should have given her several days' notice about this. I angrily told her I was not a babysitter, and then went home. The next morning, I made my 7 a.m. appointment. I did some grocery shopping afterward, and it was about 10 a.m. when I got home. The poor kid was waiting for me on my porch. He had been there for nearly 3 hours, and the little guy was scared and hungry. That night when I took the kid home, I was angry. I told her how the kid was scared and alone. She actually said that she had told me I hadn't given her enough time to find anyone else, and that his being alone was my fault. I pointed at her and said, "I am not a babysitter. Don't send him over again." That night, this woman had her adult nephew call me to scream at me for not being home when his poor aunt dropped her son off. How dare I leave a small child alone like that? I told the nephew that his aunt knew I wasn't home, so it was her that left the child all alone. I said that I had repeatedly asked his aunt not to send the kid over anymore, and I was not a babysitter. This nephew freaked out at me when I said that, and I hung up on his screaming at me. This worked for 2 wonderful quiet days, then right back to it. I tried everything, but this woman insisted that it was my neighborly duty to babysit, and would tell me as much. Finally, I decided that to solve this problem, I would just have to get a job outside of my home, and that way she would have to stop. I was too much of a pacifist back then. I no longer am. I landed an interview for a position at a local library and I was ecstatic. I told the woman to keep her son home because I had arranged for my kids to stay with their grandmother while I went to this interview. The next morning I drove to my mother-in-law's house and took my kids inside. When I went to leave, I found this woman's kid waiting for me in my car. She had actually followed me there and put her son in my unlocked car and then zoomed off while I was dropping off my boys. My mother-in-law wasn't the most flexible person in the world, and she adamantly refused to watch an extra kid. I had to cancel my interview. I was livid. I toyed with several ideas at this moment. I could take the kid to her job and leave him with her, or I could call the police and CPS. I really wasn't sure how stable this woman's job was, and I didn't want her to get fired. And when I went to go call the CPS, I chickened out because it really wouldn't be fair to the little boy. Besides, I had heard really scary stories about CPS. In the end, I just waited for her to come home. I left my boy at my house with my hubby. I planned on doing a lot of cussing, and I stomped over to her house and met her before she even got out of her car. I shouted at her. I told her she was dense, stupid, moronic, and crazy. I told her that she had lost me my job interview, and if she sent her kid over to be watched again, I was going to call CPS and the police. I told her she was violating my space, and if it took going to court to get her to knock it off, so be it. She then put her hand on her hip and in her most naughty tone said, "Well, if you didn't want to sit with him, all you had to do was tell me." I really do not know how I kept from punching her right then and there. This comment was so asinine. I turned on my heels to start stomping home when I saw her husband pulling up. Now this was the first time I'd ever met her husband. He worked at a job that only allowed him to be home on weekends. I can't blame him. I wouldn't want to be around her either. But when she saw him, she turned tail and ran into her house. He saw that I was upset and asked me what happened. I told him all of it, especially the incident about my mother-in-law's. The poor man was shocked. He had been told I was being paid and that he'd been given her money to pay me. He had no idea all of this was going on, and he was very, very apologetic over the whole thing. In fact, he apologized again to my husband when he came over to pick up his little boy. Finally, she stopped sending her kid over. Later, I heard from others that she was bad-mouthing me and warning folks about what a horrid babysitter I was, but I took that as a favor. I didn't want to babysit any kids other than my own, and I still hate doing so. I don't hate kids. I love kids. It's dealing with the parents I don't like. The kid came over only once in a while after that to play with my kids. After he called first to get permission, exactly the way it should be done. I'm sure his dad had something to do with that, because the kid only came over on weekends. This is one of the few stories I have involving this crazy lady. Her only entertainment in life seems to be how bizarre she can act in this neighborhood. I'm luckier than my other neighbors in the fact that she leaves me alone now, and I'm very happy with that. This type of woman endangered her kid by leaving him on a stranger's porch for 3 hours, and also followed you and put him in a somewhat stranger's car. If he had gotten kidnapped, I believe that she would have called the cops on you and taken this to court. Then, hopefully, she would get in trouble for endangering her kid like that. The husband should divorce her. Story 2. When I was a kid, my parents, Mom and Stepdad, were good friends with a couple, E.M. and Nice Dad. They had 3 older kids around my brother's ages, and one younger one who was the baby. After they moved away, there was an annual Friends barbecue and a few birthdays, holidays spent together. There has been some drama around E.M. Like one day, a super good friend stopped coming to the kids' birthday parties, and E.M. began to insult her every time we would ask why she wasn't invited anymore. Oh, that slur isn't welcome anymore because she is just a slur. It happened again another time. And my mom could never, and still cannot, give us a valid reason. M was always Mama's baby. She would make a drama of every flu tantrum. The kid would have nightmares and cry. She would freak out and film him to show us afterward how scary and stressful her life was. They even once gave the kid his brother's room and furnished it from zero because he didn't sleep well in his other room and he needed some change. Now on to the story. M is 10 at the time. His brother Q is 20. My stepdad has kids aged 7, 12, and my brothers are 20 and 13. The 2 families decided to rent a cabin for 10 days around Christmas. Everyone arrives at the house, and days 1 and 2 are going okay. Em complains that there is too much walking and her precious baby is tired. My mom and new boyfriend are understanding. Not every kid is trained for long walks. But after a few days, we notice everything is about Em. Em is cleaning after him. Everyone has to be on his meal sleeping schedule. She's all over him and all over us because of the noise or any disturbance. As the kids start to eat snacks outside of the mealtime, my parents ask them to put all of the dishes in the washer like we used to. Everyone agrees, but Em never does. The kids remind him gently, and it works for a time, but every time Em is around, she starts yelling at the kid who dared criticizing her baby, and do it herself. At that stage of the house became tense, and my parents felt Em getting weird about it. Em starts to lock herself in her bedroom, be even more controlling of him, and berate everyone who dares say anything negative to the kid. Even if it's the 7 years who ask him for his toy back, when finally Em lost her mind one day before dinner. My older brother P, 20 at the time, "Kiddos, who's the dummy who still forgot his bowl full of milk in the sink?" My mom, "It's okay, P. But the kids, please think about it. Do as you do at home." Em, "How dare you speak about my baby like that? He is my kid. He doesn't have to do anything. I'm doing it for him." My mom, "It's okay. We're trying to teach them to clean after themselves." Em, "No, I don't know what you're trying to do, but my baby isn't doing any of it. Your kids aren't your slaves. I'm treating mine good." Indy, "Okay, honey, maybe we'll figure things out later. Calm down." Em, "No, I will not. They are trying to force my baby to clean for everyone. He doesn't have to do anything. He is my baby." Em's kid, 20, tries to calm her down too, when Em freaks out. "You know what? I hate you. I never wanted you to be there. I want to leave." She locked herself in a room, and as her husband tried to make her calm down, she yelled, "I'm taking my baby home, and I'm asking for a divorce." She then left alone with the kid, and came back, and then forced her kids and husband to leave too, telling a few times to my parents that they were terrible parents and so on. That's the last time we saw her. I know from the kids that 5 years later she's still very much with her husband. Her mental state isn't great, but mostly she is telling to everyone that Em is doing terrible at school, while the kid is actually doing fine according to his brothers, and that life as a mother is so stressful and terrible for her. I hope Em's siblings are able to get through to him and teach him some realities of life. He's gonna have a heck of a tough time otherwise. As for Em, well, she's clearly unhinged. She won't be harmed by the world. Rather, she's the harm that we are all warned about. Story 3. So this is about my grandma and grandpa. I am getting married next spring. My significant other and I are paying for the entire wedding, so we're organizing it the way we want. Closest family, friends, rock band, flower crowns, and a cocktail bar. All was going well, until grandparents from hell decided to show their ugly side. Jokes aside with the nickname, my grandma was the sweetest, most gentle person until this fight. My grandpa, on the other hand, he is an angry individual who I don't particularly care about. On to the showdown. The list of guests was completed, and I was talking to my grandma about it, from my family's side. It's going to be 7 members because I have no relationship with others. As in the 8 years we have been dating, no one has met my fiancé. That's how close we are. But suddenly, my grandma makes a face and tells me out of the blue that I'm disrespecting her. I get confused at first, asking her to elaborate. She tells me that her family is a part of her life and heritage, talks to them like a few times a year, and she believes I do not respect her or value her as my grandma for not including them. Goes on to say that she raised me and was there to teach me everything when I was a child, and that I owe her this much. She even offers to pay for them. I explain that they mean nothing to me. They are just some people I have seen a few times in my life. She gets even more offended and tells me that they cannot matter less than my friends and colleagues. I confirm that that's exactly the case. My grandpa, who was sitting angrily next to us, starts yelling at me that I'm being horrible to my grandma and that she deserves better. She yells at me as well, saying that my behavior is killing her and that I'm being selfish. Important to know is that my grandfather is so scary. When he yells, he even gets violent sometimes. Tried to slap me once, but I threatened to slap him back if he tried. He was screaming at me and he abruptly stood up as if to confront me. I got scared and threw a glass to the floor in a mix of anger and fright. Cue even more yelling. Long story short, the entire neighborhood heard our shouting. I had an anxiety attack. They told me that I am the garbage of this earth and that they won't even come to my wedding. This hurt me greatly, but I told them what to go do with themselves. Well, concerning your grandfather, the rubbish just took itself out. But it's sad that your grandmother pulled the stunt about your wedding. At least you know where you are with her. She has no respect and little real affection for you. You can now prioritize the people who actually do care about you going forward. What matters is that you're about to start your life with the person you love most in the world, who loves you in the same way. Congratulations on your wedding, and don't let this spoil your enjoyment. Well guys, that's all for today. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, I'm gonna link it right here. The story's about OP's mom, who uses OP's locked private diary and only true safe space as her daily reading material. Check this out if you haven't, and I'll see you next time on Dr. Monkey.